Okay, hello, welcome back. I'm Savalian, a software dev slash creative, and today's video is going to be kind of a chatty video about motivation and completing long projects. This idea occurred to me as I was working on the sweater I'm knitting, because sweaters take a long time to knit, and it can be hard when doing big projects, things that take an extended period of time, like several weeks or a couple of months or years even, to get yourself to actually finish it. And I'm feeling this with my game project as well. I've been working on my game since the beginning of 2021. It's not done yet. I've been working on it still all this time, but it's hard to keep up motivation. It's hard to keep going when it feels like a project is going to take forever. And I think the ability to persist through long projects is like a whole skill. I think it's separate from the skill of like actually doing the project. And I felt this way ever since I did NaNoWriMo for the first time. So it's National Novel Writing Month. You write a novel of 50,000 words in a month. And the first time I finished NaNoWriMo, I feel like I unlocked something in my brain that helped me understand how long-term projects were done. So I wanted to share a few tips that I thought of with examples of how it might apply to different projects, kind of focusing on my big sweater knitting project. So tip 1, this one's a little bit cliche, but it makes sense. Like, it's cliche because it kind of works. And that is breaking down projects into tiny pieces. Even projects that take several years don't just happen. They're built up out of smaller pieces. So knitting, for example, every piece is a stitch. And the individual stitches take, a few seconds to make. A row might take 10 minutes. And you just sort of build up all the tiny building blocks together to complete the final project. So this tip is basically identify what those smaller building blocks are, if you don't already know what they are, and figure out how to make those as doable as possible. But kind of at a high level, this is the crux of finishing projects, is doing these smaller things repeatedly over the course of several weeks or months. So like for National Novel Writing Month, this is figuring out how to put down the individual words into your novel. You could break them down into word sprints. I really like these where you focus for 30 minutes, you see how much you could get done, take a little break, you do it again. I find that very effective if you're trying to learn something. Small moments of study time, or flashcards, or reading chapters of informational books. Any of these things could be building blocks for your big project, and it's easy. You say, I'm gonna read for 15 minutes. That is fairly easy for most people to do. There you go. Step 1, identify these small building blocks and make those as easy to complete as possible. Tip 2 kind of builds on tip 1, and this one is really, really important. Once you have your little building blocks, make sure you're putting them in the right order and that you're doing the right things. So to go back to the knitting example, if I were to just cast on and knit and just keep adding stitches indiscriminately to a sweater, I would probably not have a sweater when I was done. You have to put the stitches in the right order, you have to follow a pattern, you have to get the increases and the decreases for the shaping correct, you have to make the sleeves. So you have your building blocks, but the order you put those building blocks into the project is still very important to understand. So this is where some amount of project planning comes into play. It is important to take at least a little bit of time to figure out, okay, so I understand, like, here's my vocabulary list or whatever. What's the grammar look like? How do I study the grammar? Once I learn these vocabulary words, like if you're learning a language, how do I know how to use them? This is going to kind of build a structure for your effort to go into. So with the NaNoWriMo example, building up an outline or doing a little bit of research on the general structure of most novels, these things are critical to ending up with a project that is going to be what you want it to be. And this ties into motivation, because if you kind of just throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks, it can be really disheartening when it doesn't feel like you're making progress, because you're not effectively. If you're not doing things in the right order, you kind of just have a pile of effort that is not shaped the way that you want it to be shaped. So step 2, making a plan and making sure you are approaching the project in a way that's going to lead to the outcome you want, is important in finishing the project, because if you don't do it, you're floundering, right? So that's tip 2. And tip 3 is even more important than tips 1 and 2. And this one I think is a little bit vague. It's not very actionable right now because it's something you have to figure out for yourself. And this one is to make sure you understand the purpose or the why, of your project. So if you are working on something and it's not really tied to anything greater than itself, maybe you finish it. Maybe you do finish this big long project, but there's no reason for it. So you finish it and you're like, okay, that's it. There's nothing to celebrate because you haven't really completed anything with value. For me, we'll get just a little bit personal here. I am working on making games because I want people to be able to play them and enjoy them, and I want to be able to create that for someone else. So when I get kind of bogged down in the game development slog, it's helpful to remember, if I don't finish this, no one's going to be able to enjoy it, except me. And the same goes for things like NaNoWriMo. If you don't finish your novel, nobody can read it. That novel could be someone's new favorite novel. You don't know that. You can't know that until you publish it and get it out there. And this can go for all kinds of things. So let's take the language learning example. If you don't have anything that you want to do with that language, it can be really hard to stick with it, because what's the point, right? If you are learning a language because you have certain media you want to be able to understand, or people that you're going to meet that you want to be able to talk to, it creates this push towards doing the thing that may not be there without connecting that purpose to it. And if thinking about a purpose is too lofty, you can also think about, what do you enjoy about the project? So with knitting, I'm not knitting to save the world. There's no greater purpose really behind making a sweater, but I enjoy the process of building something out of nothing. I find that really satisfying. You can sort of get lost in the process of making one stitch after another and seeing it all build up into something else. And so even something like that, maybe you don't have a higher calling to work on whatever project you're working on, but the flow of doing it is something that's compelling for you. Keeping that top of mind is going to make it easier to sit down, look at your list of things to do and say, here's what I get to do on this project today. So those are my 3 tips. First one, break things down into smaller pieces, smaller doable pieces. The second one, make sure those pieces are going in the right order. You have a plan, a framework for the project that you're doing so you don't lose track of where you're going, basically. And then the third one is, remember why you're doing it and try to find the fun in the work that you're doing. I think a lot of work can be fun, or if fun is not the right word, satisfying, right? It feels good to do something well, even if the actual doing of it is not very fun. At least for me. And I think it does go for a lot of people. I think we crave growth and we crave the feeling that we're making progress on something. And doing longer term projects is one really powerful way to continue that feeling and continue that growth. This was nice. It's a little bit of a different video than I usually do. I hope you enjoyed it. This idea just kind of came to my mind and stayed there until I finally talked about it. So here it is. I hope it was helpful. And now I have got to actually do some game development work today. It's a flex day. I'm ready. I have time and energy to work on this thing. So I'm gonna do it. And I'm gonna keep all of those things in mind, try to break things down, make a plan, and hopefully I can get a lot of stuff done today. So thank you so much for watching. I'll be back soon with another video. Almost certainly another dev vlog of what I'm actually working on after filming this video. So subscribe if you would like to, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.